Hello, this is Justice Baxter, and welcome back to another video. And today I'm going to be talking about the recent change of the name of the Department of Defense back to the Department of War, and my thoughts on that. But before I get into the video, I do want to mention today is Memorial Day. I didn't plan it like that. That's just kind of how it ended up happening. But given the topic of discussion, I do want to mention that, and I want to take a moment of silence for all those who have given their lives for this country. Okay. So, for those of you who don't know, the U.S. Constitution doesn't actually mandate that there be a cabinet to the president or anything like that. That was actually created by Washington to, help him with the burden of his job as president. And he initially only created 4 departments. Those were the State, Treasury, War, and the Attorney General. And honestly, we should probably trim down some of the departments that we have right now, but that's a discussion for another video. So, like I said, originally, and for the first almost 200 years of our country, the Department of War, or the War Department, was called the Department of War, and it was changed by Truman in 1949 to Department of Defense to, I guess, sound less aggressive or something. Now, the funny thing about that is that the wars that we've had since the change have arguably been less defensible than the wars we had when it was called the Department of War. I mean, so since the change, we had Korea, Vietnam, First and Second Persian Gulf Wars, and the Global War on Terror. Again, most of those deeply unpopular. Probably the best one among those would be Korea, and even the Korean War is somewhat controversial. Vietnam, arguably the worst. Global War on Terror, and again, foreign wars that we arguably didn't have much of a stake in personally. And compare that to the wars that we had under the Department of War: Revolutionary War, Civil War, World War II, World War III. What am I freaking? Ilhan Omar? No. World War II. And even the less popular ones. Arguably, the Civil War is the worst war in American history, just because of it was father against son, brother against brother, the war that nobody won. And it had the highest death toll, but still arguably, it's not unpopular because it was undefensible. But even the less popular ones, or less defensible ones, like the Mexican War and Spanish-American War, are, Mexican War, obviously, Mexico wanted to go to war with us because we annexed Texas, which they still kind of wanted back. And then Spanish-American War was kind of just a misunderstanding because one of our warships blew up spontaneously, and we blamed the Spanish, although it's still not entirely clear what caused the USS Maine to explode. And then now the Iran War counts under this because it's back while it's called the Department of War. You know, I know it's unpopular right now. I'm not happy with like the way gas prices are and stuff, but bottom line for me is Iran had to be dealt with. We don't want them getting nukes. They are and have been for a long time basically universally recognized as the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism. So yeah, them getting a nuclear weapon is that's not acceptable to anybody, really. Again, it's a foreign war. It's unpopular. But the thing is, we're not going in full ground evasion. We're mostly like stalking around the area, you know, sniping essentially. We're cutting the head off the snake, you know, whack them, sit back and watch, whack them again if they need it. Now, hopefully we can be successful in that, but again, arguably, from my point of view at least, arguably more defensible than things like global war on terror and Vietnam. Which I'm not even, I take a generally pro-American, pro like, I like to defend our choices to go to the wars that we have, but I recognize that they're pretty unpopular and not entirely worth it to us in the end. But anyways, what I think is this whole changing of the Department of War to the Department of Defense, it points to a larger issue, I think, of just using euphemisms and changing the way we talk about things without actually fixing the problem. So like, you also notice, since we changed it from the Department of War, we haven't declared any wars, but we've been in plenty of horrible, bloody conflicts. And like, it goes beyond war as well. Like, oh, race relations may be at an all-time low, but like, at least white people aren't like allowed to say the N-word, so, you know, we're controlling words, wow. Or the freaking calling pedophiles minor attractive people. Yeah, that doesn't reduce their likelihood to offend. Or homelessness. Homelessness is a huge problem, but does it make you feel better that we call them unhoused people? No, that doesn't help the problem. Or like during the Biden inflation, when they tried to redefine what a recession is, yeah, that doesn't change the fact that you're in a recession, what you call it. I could go on examples of us, you know, changing the way we talk about things without fixing the underlying problems. Now, these are big problems that require complex solutions, and they're not just going to go away just because you stop talking about them, let alone just because you change the way you talk about them. Anyways, all that to say, I think the change of the Department of War, Department of Defense back to the Department of War was a good change. Not because changing in and of itself really changes the problems, but because it's going back to where we went wrong. Again, we went wrong with this when we went wrong when we started changing the way we talk about things instead of fixing the problems. And I think going back to that point, which honestly the change of the Department of War to the Department of Defense is probably a pretty good like starting point of where we went off where we went wrong there. And honestly, you're probably not going to believe me, but I had been wanting it to be changed back long before Trump ever mentioned anything about changing it back to the Department of War. But yeah, that's something that I think was a good change. Again, because changing the name didn't solve any of the issues, and going back to that point, it's like the first step is realizing that you're wrong and going back, you know. So yeah, that's my views on the Department of War, and specifically on the name change of the Department of War. If you had anything to add, if you agree, disagree, whatever, let me know in the comments below. Just, you know, try and be respectful or whatever. With that being said, though, I want to thank you very much for watching, and I will see you later. Bye.